Courage or crazy? Courage to get through life and a whole lot of crazy to survive life. Trapper, Theresa, and Cheryl, your ambassadors of Courage or Crazy. Sharing life with you, uncensored and unfiltered. Real life, real people, real courage, real crazy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Courage or Crazy. This is Cheryl Oliver. I'm one of the co-founders, and today it gives me great pleasure to introduce our very special guest, Gina. Gina is a wife, mother, daughter, community advocate, and a total HR nerd. That's in her words, not mine. Gina has a deep connection to Courage or Crazy. She has known our other co-founder, Theresa, since their late teen years. So sorry about that, Gina. She is a self-proclaimed indoor enthusiast who loves to read and make shit. That's probably another topic for another podcast, so we might find that out later. So with all of that, we know that she's going to fit right into in our Courage or Crazy gang. Gina was raised as an army brat. I'm not sure we can say that term anymore, but we just did. So it is what it is. So she basically didn't call any place home until recently. And now she is raising her family of 5 in Alaska, which we all know is the final frontier. That's probably another podcast idea. So, and in her words, she calls herself a kick-ass beautiful mess. She is joining us remotely, and I am looking at her, so I can attest to the beautiful part. So Gina's youngest, this is what we're going to talk about today, is her youngest son. He was diagnosed with spina bifida around her 32nd week of pregnancy. As you can imagine, this diagnosis broke her heart in a way that took her a very long time to recover. And I dare say that she probably is not ever going to recover from that. She has just learned to deal with it. If you would have told her back in 2006 that she would have faced this extreme challenge, she probably would have laughed in your face and said, yeah, what now? As she had already faced some great adversity in her life. How could anything be worse, she thought to herself. Well, she found out that she was in for a big surprise. I invite you to listen as Gina shares her story and her experiences with us, her trials, her tears, her laughter. Yes, we all know laughter and a whole lot of crazy makes the courageous things happen, and that's how we get through them. So I'm going to start the questions. Theresa is here with me today. Trapper is trying to be here. He is in northern Arizona. It's being hit with snow right now. So if you hear my phone ring in and some commotion in the background, that is Trapper joining us. So Gina, welcome. Thank you so much for not only being a valued listener to our podcast. Thank you for putting up with Theresa and being her friend all these years. And so let's start with a question that's pretty simple.
Awesome.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes. So let's start with a pretty simple question. What is your son's name?
My son's name is Alejandro, and his middle name is Roberto, after his father.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I didn't want to call him through these whole questions. So, and now we all know his name.
Firecracker. I asked him about how he wanted to be called in this interview, and he's like, you can go with Alex or Alexander. Like, he wanted a pseudonym. I was like, no, we're using your name.
That's very awesome. That's very awesome. So, I know the backstory also, so I can understand where the Alex kind of has a connection for these two long-term friends with Gina and Theresa. Yes. If you listen to our podcast, you will pretty much pick up on that one as well. So tell us about the conversation that happened when you found out that he had spina bifida.
Okay. So there was actually a lead up to the exam that took us to, we had to fly to Anchorage to go see a perinatologist. Excuse me if I'm butchering that word. The OB specialist, as I called it. They had been doing a lot of ultrasounds on me, and they had determined that he had club feet. Um, it took them a while to get to that point of recognizing that there was a birth defect, and they were very discreet about it. Like, I worked in the same hospital of which I was having my ultrasounds done, and I could read these people. I knew something was going on. I knew there were concerns. They were just positioning me differently, and I was very concerned. And when I finally went to see my OB with all the follow-ups, he was like, so here's the thing. Your son is going to have club feet. I said, okay. For some reason in my head, I'm like, isn't that like an old diagnosis that happened like only in the 50s?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, what? And he's like, no, a birth defect like that can happen at any time.
Right.
And I just was like, okay. And he says, we have to find out why and if there's anything else. Of which then I was referred out of town for this other perinatologist. And we made it a big deal. I live in Fairbanks. We had to drive to Anchorage. It's technically an 8-hour drive. And with a pregnant woman in the side seat there, it was probably longer. We probably used the whole 8 hours instead of like the 5 that we usually Zoom, because I had to stop a lot. And it's kind of like driving from Phoenix to Sierra Vista. There's nothing in between, only that nothing in between is a lot more nothing in between.
Right.
So very long drive. We made it an event. We brought the children with us because it was spring break. And we go into this appointment and we meet with the ultrasound tech. Amazing man, very funny, lots of humor. He's like doing our scan. He's like, all right, you're ready to go back and meet the doctor. Let me preface that we went there also to buy baby gear. We don't have stores like that in Fairbanks. And we went to a baby store, I think it was Toys R Us, and we bought like the crib and the baby bedding. And this guy was going to be my football player.
Right.
Remember that.
Okay.
He's going to be my football player. I love the sound of little babies running in your house with the crinkly diapers. You can hear their diapers.
Oh, yeah.
And just like, because you know they're up to something when you can hear that little swoosh, 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 swoosh.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking forward to that, and just like, this is going to be our football player. All my kids love soccer, so I was like, he's going to be my football player. So we bought like a sports theme, blankets and bedding and all this stuff. Fast forward, we go to the appointment later that afternoon. We meet this gentleman, the ultrasound tech sonographer. He does a great job. We go into another room, and they have us on this big TV screen, is all I can say, like a 52-inch TV screen, it felt like,
right.
is this 3D image of my son. And I can see him. I can see his face.
Aww.
I can see him. And Theresa, like, knows his face from when he was born. And I see that little boy, and I am just so, like, in awe. We all are.
Right.
And the doctor now, we're there with her, and she's doing, like, a scan on my belly again and doing all that. And she's like, okay. And just, like, we're having a moment, me and my family. We're super excited. And she says, okay, here it is. This is what's happening. And I'm like, okay. And she just leans in and grabs my, she's on my right side of my body. She grabs my hand and gets like 10 inches away from my face and says, your son has a birth defect. And I don't remember all the words because it came so fast, right. And it was just like machine gunning at me. And she's like, he has a birth defect. He has a neural tube defect, and there's a possibility he may not be able to walk ever. He's not going to be able to feed himself. He's not going to be able to do. But she just kept going and going and going. And I just was looking at her like, what? And like, how am I supposed to receive this news? How am I supposed to hear you? It's just all these words coming at me. And then she says the key word. She says, it is okay to grieve what I am telling you because this is not good news. Ugh. And I was like, oh shit. She really is telling me bad things.
Ugh.
And I look over, she didn't let us excuse the children before she did it.
Oh, no.
And they are in tears. And my husband is crying. And we're just like, what the fuck? It was just so horrible. And I'm like, she's like, do you have any questions? And I just looked at her like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to say? You've just given me all this news. And until, in my head, I'm thinking, until she said the word grieve, I wasn't accepting that something was wrong.
Right.
I refused to accept that something was wrong. And she walks away, like she says some other stuff, I don't know. She then realizes that I'm mad because the children are in there, and she's like, I can excuse them. And I'm like, give us a minute with them.
Right.
And so, my Mateo was only, let me see, Mateo was 6 and Felicity was 8. So Mateo was still a kinder baby. And he's like hearing this news about a baby brother that he's so excited about. And he's thinking his brother's going to die.
Oh, my God.
And Felicity doesn't understand what's happening. So we gathered them to us and held them to us and just told them everything's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. And then we were like, we asked them if they wanted to go sit in the other room and get some snacks and excused them. And I think Robert took care of that because, of course, I'm the big, great whale on the table and can't do anything. And he comes back in and we just look at each other like, what? I am, 36 years old. I knew it was a risk to have a child this late, but we had struggled with infertility for years and years. And so when this happened, this miracle happened,
Right.
we never, I personally never thought, this would be the outcome.
Right.
I thought I would have a complicated pregnancy, which I did, but I didn't think there would be an impact on my child. So she comes back in and she asks us if we have any questions. And I probably had some. I don't remember what they were. They weren't important.
Right.
Didn't matter. She's already broken me. I was hating her.
Yeah, rightly so.
We all look back on that day, and I was like, I hate that woman. I hate the way she did it. I hate the way she delivered it to me. And I know medical. I know people, and they're like, they have to always share the full. And I was like, but it was the way she did it.
Right.
Is that what broke me? And that she let my children be there. She knew what she was going to say. Why didn't she pause and say, can we excuse the children?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I couldn't forgive her for that. She asked questions I don't know. My husband, though, I love him so much. He looked at her and he said, is there anything he won't be able to do? And she said, no. She goes, you will help set those limits. I am over here like my whole world is blown up and I can't think forward. And my husband is thinking, how are we going to move forward and what is his limitations?
Oh,
He's
that's
thinking so
awesome.
much differently than I am.
Right. That's awesome. I like that part.
Yeah.
I like that part.
Yeah.
So you said that was when you were about, 32 weeks into your pregnancy, right?
Yeah, very late in my pregnancy.
And did you make it full term with your pregnancy?
Unfortunately, I went into 40 weeks.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Unfortunately for you having to carry a child around, yes, we get that.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah. So
it was. We were off. Me and the doctors didn't agree on dates, and they were absolutely sure I was at 38 weeks, and my calculations were I am going into my 40th week. Right. And when he popped out, they were like, "Oh, we think you were right."
So he was. So tell me, because I wonder about this when, of course I was briefed on the story a little bit from Theresa, but that time period between you getting that news, and especially it being in such a terrible way, and then carrying that baby, and, we all know our children in our womb are a reflection of us and the moods we are in and the foods we eat and everything. They're such a part of us. So how did you deal with that emotional time of those few weeks before you got to see him and knowing all the things and challenges that you, your family, and him were going to be faced with when he finally entered this world?
It was hard. It was really hard. And I kept the naivety is that I believed that they were wrong.
Right.
I wanted to believe they were wrong.
Yeah.
And they're inside. He's kicking the crap out of me.
Right.
And I'm like, how can he be kicking me if he has no feeling or, And I did what everybody should not do. I was all over the internet looking stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dr. Google.
And exactly. And trying to understand this from so many different, there's so many outcomes that come out of getting a diagnosis like that. It's a neurotube defect, and it all matters on where that happened at. Is it high? Is it low? Is it, which explains why she said so much.
Gotcha.
Why, each vertebrae, everything makes a difference on what kind of abilities or disabilities you're going to have. Are you going to be able to swallow? If it's up high, you're not going to be able to swallow on your own. If it's mid-core, you might have, it's just so many different outcomes without knowing exactly. And, one of the things I felt a lot, I think one of the questions you ask in here is about guilt. Once he was born, I had so much guilt that his spot was not a little lower. I have no control over that.
Right.
But I felt like I owned that because if it had been 2 more vertebrae down, he would have been able to walk or would have had, incontinence problems.
So,
So, of course, as a mom, I took the blame for that.
Right.
I'm going to step in for a second.
Okay.
Because of being with Gina in Phoenix once they were down here. The spot that she's talking about, it would be go down your back and come up a couple steps.
From the lowest
From
point?
the lowest point.
Okay.
And it was, and Gina, you can help me, but it's basically
L1 through L5.
L1 through L5?
It was, the spot looked like there was a fluid
A little,
bubble. His little button.
a little fat pocket. A little fat pocket.
Little pocket.
Little pocket. And it kind of bumped out. And the other his vertebrae going up his spine were rotated. Some of them. I can't remember which ones exactly.
It's a 45-degree angle.
Yes.
It was a 45-degree angle. It literally, where we naturally curve in, his went chook, chook, and came out like a V.
Oh, my God.
It's crazy. I remember the first time I saw his x-ray, I almost threw up because I couldn't believe, how distorted it was. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like I was repulsed. I just was like, it's my baby.
Right.
Is he in pain?
Of course.
Is he hurting? It was really hard to take.
So, what happened? He comes into the world. When is his birthday, by the way?
May 13th.
May 13th. Okay, so May 13th happens. He comes into the world. Tell us what happened. What was, I can't imagine this wasn't like they're taking him somewhere to do all kinds of tests or whatever. So fill us in on, he's finally here, and now what?
So they made arrangements. They made us make arrangements to, I had to come down for 2 weeks prior to his birth. They wanted to keep me in close observation so that I wouldn't go into labor. And so so they needed to see me every day. So we moved, we uprooted ourselves, me and my husband, down to Anchorage for those 2 weeks. And we had to rely on friends and coworkers here in town to help watch the other 2 during that time. And they put together this great, collaboration of this couple watched on Monday through Friday, and then gave them a break. This other person would watch them. And it was just so amazing, all the people that stepped in. And I'm a very private person, so this whole endeavor has been horrible to me. It was just so difficult for me as an introvert to take this on and to be able to say, like, the day that we found the diagnosis out, I called back to my department, because that's my family, and I told them what happened and the diagnosis. And my friend Lisa at the time, she shared with the department what had happened, and I got nothing but like love and affection and just rained down of just this overwhelming love from everybody in the community, that they were there to support me. And it was really scary. I've never had that other than my military families, and I've been away from that for so long. So I was always very standoffish. So this was a really hard thing to accept. So they took my kids and they helped them like be here without us. And it was the first time I'd ever been away from my kids that long. Yeah, that was the first time I'd ever been away from my littles and ever. And so we go off to Anchorage, and we proceed to have go through daily exams, and them checking on me, and they're like, okay, he's doing fine. The plan was to deliver him in Anchorage via C-section, so that if there was, they were expecting it to be a myelomeningocele that was open, meaning like the spinal fluid is leaking out and that he's in a heightened state of danger. And I could be totally wrong with all these terminologies. There's been so much that we've gone through, and reverse diagnosis and whatnot. But that's what I remember. I say, this is my reality.
I remember that part.
Yeah, exactly. And so they have us set up. We have a neurosurgeon on standby. The day of his first day that they're going to do the surgery, they have to do a cancellation. So they get me all prepped up, do the thing with the razors and all that. And then they have me go wait. They give me the medicine to make you not nauseous. They're getting me started. They got an IV in and everything. And then they stop and they say, we're not doing it today.
Oh,
what?
Good Lord.
They're like, the surgeon can't do it today. They're not ready. So I waddle back to my room. We watch game shows and we wait for the next day. The next day, I don't even make it over there. They cancel again.
Oh, goodness.
So I'm like, great. So then finally May 13th rolls around, and I was just like, I refuse to leave this room if you are not going to do this. And so they did. Not probably because I threw a fit, but probably because they had time.
Because the day was right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. They, things I didn't realize, they needed a team there.
Right.
They had all kinds of surgeons. They had everybody. It was all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the process was going to be, we're going to do a C-section, and we're going to lift him out, and we're going to put him in this plastic little, basically it looked like a giant ass Ziploc bag. And we're going to put him in this, and we're going to pass him through the pass-through. And on the other side, they're going to take him to surgery to start his back repair. And so I was like, okay, so we're ready. We're going in there. And they do the C-section thing, and they have him in there, and they pop him out. And nobody tells you that your baby does not look like what you think a baby looks like in a C-section. Right. I saw him, they held him up, and I'm like, that's not my baby. He was just so purple and squishy. And I'm like, this doesn't look like the babies I've seen other people push out. And they're like, well, that's because you didn't push him out.
Right.
It was really traumatic for me. Besides being a C-section, they had to, they missed the mark for the epidural, and they had to do it 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
And I was in hysterics. It was so bad. I was hugging the nurse, and all I know is her name was Gabby, and my face was in her boobs. And I was like crying, and I'm like, I'm sorry, Gabby. I don't need to be crying into your boobs, and I don't know you. And she's like, oh, you're good.
Right.
You're good. You're good.
They're used to it.
Yeah, she's like, they're going to get it. They're going to get it. I'm like, I'm going to die here. And I'm very dramatic, as Theresa can attest to.
She's never been dramatic a moment in her life.
I'm a tough cookie, but I lose it over little things. And I don't know. An epidural that's been missed 3 times
that's more than just a little thing. So, yeah.
So they finally tap it, and it's like magic. And then they're like, we need you to move. I'm like, nope, it's gone. I can't do nothing. You have to move me. So I'm really drugged from the waist down. Like, I just felt so, I don't know how strong those meds are or anything, but I'm very susceptible to anything. So I was like, blah. So of course I'm being ridiculous. They show me my child. I'm like, this isn't my kid. And then I hear all this, like, when they're throwing out numbers and stuff, and he's a 9, blah, blah, blah. And, oh no, we didn't expect this. And I'm like, what? You're trying to hear. And then they just passed him off. They showed him to my husband, and then they passed him through the window. And I remember telling them, I don't feel well. And they forgot that they didn't give me the anti-nausea pill, because this is the third time.
Oh
and so I just like bleh, threw up in my hair.
Oh.
So my husband's trying to take care of me, and then somewhere after that I passed out.
Okay.
I come to in recovery, and the nurse is like, you need to wake up. You need to wake up. And I said, why? What's wrong? What happened? She's like, no, your husband wouldn't hold the baby. He said that you did all the work and that you need to hold him first.
Aww.
And so I was like, what? She's like, so you need to go out there so he can hold the baby too.
Aww,
I'm
how
just
sweet is that?
trying to wake up, and I can't, and I keep falling back asleep. And then I thought, isn't he supposed to be in surgery? And she's like, I'll let your husband tell you. And I'm like, oh, shit, what's wrong?
Oh, my gosh.
And so we go, finally they wheel me out, and they put him in my arms, and this sucker's, his eyes are open, and he is staring at me.
Aww.
I have a great picture of him just looking at me and me looking at him, and he is way bigger than I thought he would be. He's like 7 pounds or 7.5 pounds, I don't remember, and he's just this big little boy in my hands with this crown of hair that goes down to the nape of his neck, and he's just beautiful.
Aww.
He's amazingly beautiful. I hadn't looked down to see what the damage was yet or anything. I waited until my husband came over, because I didn't know what I was going to see.
Right.
You don't know. And so I see his feet, and they're curved. They're very, almost like they're like little flippers, and that's actually what I call them. Mm-hmm. They're folded into each other, almost like they want to naturally cross-leg, and they're like little, like his foot, his heel, ankle didn't develop. So instead of having the bend, it's flat, and his little toes are there, and he's just, I was like, Robert, he's got flippers. And he's like, well, you always wanted a water baby. And so I'm like, okay. And then, like, I was like, that's it? And he's like, yeah. He goes, turn him over. And I'm like, is it scared? Why isn't he in surgery? He's like, the doctor doesn't want to do his surgery. I'm like, why? And he said, because his myelomeningocele was covered. It was safe, and he did not feel comfortable going in, cutting into this protected area, and possibly screwing it up, essentially.
Right.
And I thought, wow. I was mad at first. And again, my husband is like the words of wisdom. He's like, Gina, he's not comfortable. That's a good thing. He knows his limits.
Right.
I said, what are we going to do? And he's like, we'll figure it out. And so I flip him over, and I see that little fat pocket, and I'm like, can we touch it? And I'm like poking at it, and I'm like, he's got a button. He has a flipper, and he has buttons.
Flipper and a button.
He's got flippers and a button.
All right.
He is so, like, calm. This baby is not crying. He is not doing it. He is checking me out. Aww. And he's like, who is this woman messing with my button? And who is this woman who is, like, got me undressed in the middle of this cold room? But he doesn't cry. He's just perfect. And so in that moment, I was like, he's perfect. Why did I waste the last 6 weeks so distressed?
Right.
It was just such a change in feelings and emotions. I don't know what I was expecting, but everybody made me feel like I was going to be expecting the worst case scenario. And up to that moment, I didn't know what that even meant.
Right.
But all I know is this baby in front of me was perfect. Flippers and all.
Spoken like a true mama.
We are going to wrap this podcast up. For everybody listening, since Trapper's not here, I have to step in and I have to do the ending. Great. But we are going to have a part 2 to this. So we're going to continue the story with Gina and Alejandro with flippers and buttons and all. And he was incredibly adorable, by the way. I met him in person. He was too much for words. So if you want to hear more about this, join us for part 2 with Miss Gina. And we thank you all for listening to us and joining us and being a part of Courage or Crazy. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and, I said that wrong. What does Trapper call it?
I have no
I
idea.
always
He calls
forget.
it
Something else. And YouTube. And we appreciate each and every one of you. And if you've enjoyed listening to Gina talk, engage with us. Ask questions. We can pass them on to Gina and she can answer them. And we look forward to being with you all again very soon. Have a good one.